Hey guys, welcome to ManCard Mondays, episode number 11. How do I stay sane? Right? With all this going on at home, how do I stay sane? How do you stay sane during a pandemic? Let's take a look. Dr. Richard Webb, how the heck are you?
Doing very, very well, thank you.
Awesome.
It's really good to just to see you, in some interactive way without a mask.
Right.
But also it's just good to be on the ManCard.
Yeah.
It's just cool.
Hey, welcome to ManCard Monday. You know what? Our goal here with ManCard Mondays is to help guys answer some of the essential questions that they should or need to be or probably already are asking right now, depending upon their life stage and what they got cooking these days. So, Richard, I am so excited to have you on here for our final episode of season one. This is episode number 11, I believe, and it is our final one of the year. And so, we're going to have some fun with this. We decided to save the best for last. Don't tell all my other guests that, but I'm just kidding. But no, really, really excited, especially as we look at today's topic. How do I stay sane during a pandemic, right? Which if there's a guy out there that is not asking this question right now, I am so jealous. Right? I mean, I think a lot of us are just trying to figure out, okay, like what do I do next, and how do I prepare for the future? And here's the other piece, though, if we're going to talk about this today, right? We are fully aware that everybody's experience with the past, well, let's just call it 2020 in general right now. Let's just go back all 12 months, right?
Yes.
But certainly since March on, like it's affected all of us in different ways because we all have different circumstances, different situations, different tools and things like that. But that's what we're going to jump into today. First, though, I know not everybody that watches our little online show here knows you super well. So would you take a minute and just introduce yourself and tell us, Richard, what we really need to know about you.
All right. Okay, here we go. Well, first of all, my name is Richard Webb, and I'm the pastor for discipleship at the West Des Moines campus of Lutheran Church of Hope. Say that 5 times real fast.
There you go.
What else do I do? Photographer. I like to play music, all kinds of keyboards, you name it, and like to read, and I'm a coffee snob.
There you go.
That's the essential Richard.
Everything you need to know. Also, at one point, myself, along with the rest of our team, we have dubbed you the Warlord. So there's a nickname that doesn't get thrown around very often. I don't even know how that stuck because I just think it's very hilarious. So anyway, Yes. And I love how you always often mention how you're the firstborn of a dysfunctional family. And so we all have this rebellious streak in us as well. We may not all be firstborns, but we're all born in some form of a dysfunctional family. And so it's fun to do life with you and do ministry with you. And it's been fun also, I think, for both of us to have a front row seat in each other's lives as we have gone through this whole crazy season together. And so the way I really want to get at answering this question today, how do I stay sane during a pandemic? I thought it might be helpful for you and I just to offer a picture of a reflection process that guys can do on their own. I have for over a decade loved this time of year where you get a chance to look back. I've always seen a brand new year as like a blank, fresh white sheet of paper, 8.5 by 11, right? And you get to look at the year ahead with optimism and hope and all those things. And I love like just taking all the clutter from the previous year and, putting that in the recycle bin and moving on. That's going to be maybe a little different. We kind of know some of what we're dealing with already as we look. But I thought we could do that. And so to start, I just wanted to ask you, right, what's been a blessing, expected or unexpected, that you've experienced in 2020?
Oh, I've done a lot of reflecting on that. And as much as this has been a very sucky year, I cannot believe the amount of blessings that I've experienced. Where shall we start? Well, one is I have very close friends that I am in regular contact who live, seven time zones away. And
Wow.
I don't think we would have been motivated to keep those friendships going. And so Zoom and other technologies like that have sort of gotten rid of distance. Both of these friends live in Denmark.
Okay.
Who knew?
Yeah.
The other is this is trivial and kind of silly, is the K drama and all things Korean. It's wild. Today I had, if I can pronounce it right, jjajangmyeon, which is black bean noodles. It is Korean mac and cheese without the cheese.
Right.
It is comfort food, and it's really good.
Nice.
So I a blessing would be black bean noodles.
There you go.
Seriously, the other is at church where I serve. I keep seeing God showing up just all the time, nonstop. I don't know if he's always been doing that, but for somehow I'm more aware of it. So, just all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I would say the last blessing this is a curious one because it's sort of a forced blessing. It's part of also one of my mental health practices is just being intentionally kind to people. And when I biff it, being quick with the apology, have that right in the front of my tool belt.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Well, that's a great list of things to feel have been blessed with this year and to be thankful for. And I would be right there with you. Maybe not so much on the Korean mac and cheese without the cheese or whatever you said. I haven't gone down that road, but there are many, many things that I have in common with that list. And that's one of the things that's been interesting to me that's kind of framed all this up. And I've had a few different people say, man, it's like, I just have all these indications that God was kind of getting me ready for this. And I would even say as a church, we've experienced that, right? You think about our 10 for 10 vision and how number one on that list was to bring the gospel, right, to millions of people. And like, how do you do that being West Des Moines, Iowa? And how do we grow our online audience and all those kinds of things? And I mean, God fast tracked a lot of that. We're not there, of course. We still have a lot of work to do, and we're still trying to figure out, how God's going to make all these things happen. But for me, it was my wife and I got to take a vacation in January of last year to a warm, sunny destination. We got to go to Hawaii, and I was doing this looking back and thinking ahead process. And the word that I got as I kind of prayed, and I said, God, just give me a word that's going to define 2020. And the word was better. And I was like, oh, cool. Like, I'm going to do better relationships, better ministry, better family, right? Better parenting, all these things. I even thought to myself, yeah, like God, I want to be a better person. I should have known like that there was something coming, right? Because to me, that was like, I was going to come up with my plans and like make these things happen. And it's like, nope. You're going to get better this year by just being tested and stretched and pulled and challenged and all of these things. And yet I can see so much of that at work, So you and I have also talked about just the generosity of the people that fund our jobs, right? As part of this movement that Hope is. Like, I just think that's an incredible blessing as well. And then I just like maybe one of the things that goes under this idea of better as well was, like even this online platform that you and I are talking on right now, like the ministry I was doing didn't have anything like that ahead of time. And now, like, how do you connect with people virtually? Like we're trying to figure that stuff out. And so things have gotten better on a lot of levels, but it's not been easy. And so there's a give and take with that. So yeah, which kind of brings us right into the next question. So what is it that you have found most challenging? I love this too. Like, how on earth do you pick?
Where do we start?
Yeah, but what have been some of the pain points and the challenges, the things that didn't feel like a blessing to you in this past year?
Well, you know how they talk about a trifecta? I think it's a quadrifecta. And I group it under working on the ability to let go, because even with stuff we can't control, we're impacted by. So we got all the natural disasters, from the fires to the hurricanes.
Yeah.
You've got COVID, obviously. And then you've got all the economic disruption that goes with COVID. And then you have American politics.
Yeah.
And, it's just this, as you like to say, it's the mother of all dumpster fires, know. And you find yourself, I mean, there's a sense of the stress just ups because the background noise is just louder. And I would say that's one of the big things. It's just, I have never been so conscious of having to very intentionally keep letting go of stuff. Before, American politics was amusing. Now it's sort of like, it'll amp me up and make me anxious. And I'm like, wait a second, that's weird. So that's that. The other is I have a list of people, and just warning to everyone that once we get herd immunity, I have a list of people who are going to get hugs.
Yeah, sure. Whether they like it or not. Good luck with that.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. I just want to say I'm bigger than you. Deal with it. No.
Yeah.
But yeah, but seriously, the inability to really sit down with someone, and you know how when we're present in front of each other, we read all the body language and all the nuances, and that's that full embodied communication that we're all used to, and now we don't got that, and and the other just the just cabin fever, Of course, on a lighter note, the COVID-19, and I mean pounds.
Yes.
So yeah, but I would say those are the biggies that I would also say, and this is really important. I've just been thinking about this with other people, is what I call the invisible exhaustion. Like I said before, our adrenaline levels are all upped. Like we're in a low grade warfare. And you wonder, who's going to drop the bomb on your town this week,
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that goes away once we get herd immunity, that we can all kind of breathe and not worry about who's going to wind up in the hospital.
Yeah. Yep. Even as you and I are recording this, I'm getting email updates on another guy that I know that's a part of our church family here that's going onto the ventilator, and it's just I can feel that kind of simmering under the surface. And I think that's one of the things that's been hard for me about this year as well. I think the other is being a parent, being married, being in a house. If I think about some of the hardest part of this last year for me, initially, like I thought, oh, this is kind of cool. We get to slow down. And that is one of the things that I'm very thankful for. I think is that this has showed me a lot of what I was taking for granted, and has, helped me trim some unessential parts of my life that I probably was invested in that maybe it wasn't smart to be. But man, like the lack of alone time. And like you said, you've had to intentionally keep letting go of things. I think I've had to monitor some of my, I guess you and I would both see health holistically and say that it's more than just physical, right? There's emotional, spiritual, financial, intellectual, all those kinds of things. And just to be attuned to that has come out of this challenge of just, feeling, and we've talked about this even in some of our men's ministry programming type stuff, right? There is a vulnerability to temptations, whether that's Culver's, which is a burger chain if you're not from the Midwest, right, to spending too much time watching the news and just tuning out of life, just wanting to give up, all the way to indulging in things that we should not be indulging in, right? Yeah. And so there are. I feel like as a whole, yes, like my internal world has just been in anguish, has just been tormented, I think, based on not getting some fundamental needs. Like I've found some substitutionary ways to try and meet those needs through, Zoom happy hours and connecting with people and all those kinds of things. But it just seems like at every turn, there is this invisible fatigue that comes from always having to adapt and calibrate your strategy to stay sane. So there's been a lot of challenging things with that as well. Let's jump to the next part of this then, Richard. What is it that you're going to take away from this past year? What is it that you have learned? Maybe one of the other ways I would say it, I love some of this phrase from a mutual mentor we have, Terry Walling. What is it that God has deposited into you or your noggin that you dare not forget this year? What is it that you feel like you're going to take away?
I think the biggest one is my relationship with God in terms of a deeper intimacy, but also identity. I have a kind of a root way of thinking about myself, especially if I'm feeling disconnected and disoriented. I'll say, who am I? Well, I'm the one Jesus is committed to.
Mm.
And somehow for me personally, that just settles me. In other words, if I'm feeling useless or in people's way or unneeded or all that stuff, just remember the person who counts is committed and ain't going nowhere.
Yeah.
And that to me, summarizes the whole gospel story. But it for me, it's very personal. I've learned also other things. I have high control needs. No. Well, and pretty well every piece of unfinished business that I didn't want to deal with just has come roaring out.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been going to the school of character formation, and I never thought, well, at least I don't have to pay COVID $150 an hour for therapy. I get it whether I like it or not.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say the other thing I've learned is life goes better when you're honest with yourself. And in this case, it's very hard to lie to yourself during this period because your stressors are so high, something will tell you that you're not paying attention.
Yeah.
And that's, while it's not pleasant, it's good if you're willing to lean into it.
Right. Right. And that is a key distinction there, right? I mean, and this is part of where my heart goes out to people in all sorts of different circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
Some of us had a rough go of it pre-COVID. And, if you find yourself disoriented or tired, right,
Mm-hmm.
or disconnected, feeling alone, missing relationships, whatever it is, like life was hard enough. And then you put this other stuff on top of it. It can be a lot. And if we start to lose hope, right, our posture changes. And I mean, it's very easy to get worn down to the point of just focusing on survival, right? Let alone trying to thrive or, grow. Like, who's got time and energy for that? I've had that thought a few times this year. Like, whatever, God, I'll just learn the lesson later. Just help me get out of this, right?
Yeah. And what I've learned with survival mode is it just makes things worse. Because with survival mode, the neighbor is either an object to leverage for your advantage or an obstacle to get pushed out of your way.
Okay, unpack that some more, because that just that feels huge. What do you mean by that? Well,
when I get into it's all about me mode, which is what survival mode is, and you can get there from plain fatigue. You're confronted with a big question. What are you going to do with that feeling? And again, it's not wrong to feel the feeling. And that'd be another one there. It's just because emotions are, if they're colors, they're a lot brighter right now than they are, not in COVID. You have to be okay with that. It's what are you going to do about them? Well, if you indulge in poor me, woe is me, or, and all the things you can do, like you said, you can fall into temptation. But I think also what happens is in community, whether it's family or work, you begin to think, okay, if I walk in with a past posture of what am I going to do, then everything becomes about power. In other words, I got to win this, and everything's win-lose. And suddenly you don't want to collaborate with anyone because it's work. Why can't you just do it my way?
Yeah.
You short circuit everything to either or black-white rather than thinking, okay, let's actually ask what's really going on. Suddenly you have villains and heroes, and you can guess you're not the villain, and so in that way, then your neighbor is just basically becomes the punching bag you work out your neurosis on.
Yeah.
And last time I checked, most neighbors don't like that. And then what happens is you trigger it in them, and then you're off to the races.
Yeah. Well, I would agree with that.
So that's why I said I keep the apology. And that's why I keep the apology right up here in the front of my tool belt, because sometimes, you go there and you got to catch yourself, you got to own it, and you got to tell the neighbor you're owning it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, I guess I keep wanting to go back to these other questions we've talked about and talk about things that we've learned. But I think even just a very practical learning this year for me has been the 30-second pause, right? Like the 30-second, like deep breath, think, and also just the relationship between my energy level and the way, like, my temptation or proclivity to go negative on something. If I get a good night's sleep, I can be way more hopeful and way more optimistic, and I can absorb a curveball way more easily, right? Not that I don't have probably almost daily. You can just should have had my wife on here too to back me up and tell you the real truth about how this year has gone. Maybe we'll do that sometime. But like taking care of yourself.
That I thought.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yep. You just said something that I thought was very profound. If I get a good night's sleep, I can be way more hopeful. How we are physically, from are we eating well? Are we exercising? Are we sleeping well? Is intimately connected to our attitudes and postures. And so, again, because when you lose hope, you go into survival mode, the neighbor gets it in the teeth. So there's this relationship between how we treat others and how we treat ourselves. And it's real basic. It's not even like, fancy, just eat right, exercise, get a good night's sleep, and your neighbor will thank you for it.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know that I've thought about the external implications of that quite so clearly, where, because so often we think about those things, and I've had some of those topics even on this show, like things we feel like we should do, or maybe there's a long-term payoff. But I'll tell you, like you were saying, like you can't lie to yourself for long, because these trends and their consequences become obvious over time. Because we're in this micro, cosm, this pressure cooker, like you can see the negative results on that other people experience, as if we may find ourselves negatively responding to what's going on around us already. So that's huge. So Richard, since we just talked about some of the things that we have learned, and we've both articulated kind of the things we haven't appreciated about this year, what is your strategy for staying sane, right? And I suppose that's about a good 2020 goal right now, soon to be 2021. Let's just stay sane, right? Let's not be all things to all people. Like let's make sure we return to earth or whatever our new normal is. Let's arrive at that destination intact. Like what is your strategy for that? And because I think we're all comparing notes on that to some extent, or at least I hope we are, and intentionally trying to think about ways we can, because I feel like with winter, at least in the Midwestern states, we're in Iowa, right? So that's getting harder to connect with people. Numbers continue to go all over the place. Our resources have changed. And so what are you doing to stay sane moving forward?
Well, there's several things I've done. One, I'm going to put a shameless plug in. When you said pause, I'm going to put a plug in for the Pause app. I highly recommend it. There's the 30 seconds, there's the minute, there's the 3 minutes, there's the 5 minutes. The 10-minute is actually the 5-minute twice, but details. But I highly recommend that, because pausing is a huge thing. It just resets everything. And again, the kind of pause is where you let go. So it's perfectly suited to me, firstborn of a dysfunctional family. The other is get out of the freaking house every day. Do something. Go shopping, or walk the mall, or if the weather's warm enough, take a walk. And to me, that's really important, because if you start caving, in other words, or hibernating, that will mess with you. I would say also, and especially this is important if you cannot leave the house, is love the Zoom, not for the Zoom's sake, but for who you can talk to.
Yeah.
I would say get very intentional, schedule appointments if you have to, but if you can talk to somebody on Zoom at least once a day, that way you're having people contact and you're not inside your head so much.
Yeah.
As a Christian, man, lean into Jesus. I mean, however God has wired you to spend time with him, go do it. And we've all got different ways. So I'm not going to, talk about, get into details there, but however you experience God's presence, go do it. That is huge. As I often say to people, my goal is to look at Jesus looking back at me. And that's how I figure out who I am. And I think we need that reset. I'd say also lean into hobbies. I mean, I get absorbed into photography or music, or obscure things like, foreign language TV, and now foreign food. And I had one last one. Oh, a couple last ones. I went out and got a treadmill. So that's called If You Can't Walk. Because I'm a cheapskate, I got the cheapest one I could find that will last a while.
Yeah.
It does not have the big screen. Besides, I don't want to do a group spin. It's just not going to happen. And gosh, there was one more I wanted to say, but I can't remember. Oh, yes. This is really important. And I'm going to tell just a short story on this. So I'm really exhausted one night, and I really just want to be all about me. And I get this call that somebody needs a pastor. And immediately I get really grumpy, like, tomorrow's my day off, and tonight I'm already tired already. And can't someone just take this on Tuesday, and blah, 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 blah. And then there's a little voice in my head says, you'll feel better if you're not thinking about yourself all the time. So I text back and say, sure, I'll take it. I get the number, I call. And sure enough, when I got off the phone, I felt far more relaxed. I felt far clearer. And I realized I'm going to have a much better night because I went and served somebody, even though it was on the phone for about 5-7 minutes.
Yeah.
And I've experienced that before, is when you interact with someone else for the purpose of making their day better, it is incredibly therapeutic. And it also has to correlate with the way God wired us up. We are most like God when we are doing that. So no wonder it's therapeutic.
Sure.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, those are awesome ideas and ways. And again, for like the 15th time, I feel like in this episode, I feel like you and I are very much on the same page. And I've often used that even, pre-COVID, that idea of serving, getting attention off myself and getting wrapped up in something larger as a way to kind of redirect and get us moving forward. And I love what you said about experiencing God's presence and whatever that looks like for you. I agree. One of the things that's been really helpful for me lately has been if I get a chance to watch a sunset, I do. And the great thing is they're like early right now. You don't have to wait till, it's before dinner time most of the time for me right now.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, even that's involved me getting in my van. So you and I, one of the dynamics to point out is you and I are in the opposite in the sense, though, you were just talking about connecting with people and intentionally doing that. I, in much of my experience, am in experiencing the opposite of that, where I'm like, I'm having to seek out time alone, to the point where I've ducked out, jumped in my van, and I have a spot I park to watch the sunset every once in a while. I
have to laugh, Andy, because we are experiencing a sunset on my face right now.
Yeah. There you go.
I just thought I'd call it out and own it.
Yeah.
I forgot to close the windows, and I'm going to shine like an angel by the time this time is over.
There you go. Right. But it's, I think connecting with those things, and then we're embodying right now, I think one of the other disciplines for me, and that is fun, and that is laughter, whatever it is. I can remember even in March and April, like these most random little 30-second videos on Twitter or whatever, like somebody's dog doing something. I mean, it was like, I should not be laughing this hard at this, but I am. And it felt so good. Seeking those kinds of things are huge. And then I think too, there's something about adventure. I find that, it speaks to my masculine soul. I love putting myself in situations where it's like, can I do this? And one of those therapeutic things for me has been working on my house. I became a handyman. And I was fairly handy before, but this time it's like power tools and saws. And I mean, I found myself working on some housing stuff. Like I had some plumbing issues and electrical issues. And I'm like, I could pay somebody. No, I'm going to take my life into my hands and try and figure this out. And so stretching myself, in safe ways, like, can I do this or not? And feeling that sense of victory, whether it was getting a piece of flooring to line up right, or, getting this plumbing leak fixed and not having to like rely on anybody else. There was something where I was like, yes, my kids heard this. I I reacted just a little. It was just a little too personal the way I was declaring victory over parts of my house. So, but that's been huge. And then I think to intentionally really find just, and I don't have a lot of bandwidth for it, but figure out who are the people that, like it's a win-win when we spend time together and connecting with that. And of course you are one of those people. So
well, back at you.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a good list. I think guys that you're watching this, I think it's up to you to figure out. I think the key message today that I would have for all of us is you got to be a little intentional with this. You don't have to go overboard. You don't have to become a nerd and have a spreadsheet and all those things. Although some of us are like that, and spreadsheets are like one of the tools God has given us for therapy. I don't know. Like I love charts and graphs and all that kind of stuff. And if that's you, go hog wild, but don't go overboard with it. And then you need to be holistic as you think about this. The way you need to start working on the self-care stuff is when you find yourself frustrated, discouraged, irritable for a long period of time. I think it's like we're all feeling something. And if you're one of these people that's, you're having a hard time giving yourself permission to feel these things, Richard and I are here today saying you got to feel the things. Like every one of us is dealing with some sort of a setback, a detour, or a longing that is unmet right now. And that is the way it is. And so we're here as a whole men's ministry and as a church to help you figure out healthy, life-giving, exciting ways to feed your soul. Because there are a lot of alternatives out there that are not going to be helpful in that. So there you go. Awesome. Well, that'll do it for this episode. Richard, any final thoughts? Anything else you'd love to say to the guys tuning in today?
The thing that just occurred to me is this will end. And that's very important that we think larger than just the COVID. We don't want it to become our world. It doesn't mean we minimize it or deny it. But we think bigger than it,
Yeah. And I think often as you and I both counsel and coach people through grief related to death or other tragedies they face in their lives, this is a process that it's a weird paradox, right? And we feel this a lot in life. There is pain and there is hope, and they are all mixed together. And so one of the things that's most helpful in that also, I think, is just you have to look at things 1 minute, 1 hour, 1 day at a time. And yet also with this hope on the horizon, vaccines, everything else, it's also wise to start thinking a little bit longer term as well. And so I don't know how we do those things at the same time. Maybe that'll be another episode of ManCard, but whatever it is you find yourself going up against, guys, you are not alone. You are loved by God. You are one of his sons. And so we want to encourage you to live into that identity as well. So that'll do it for this week's episode. Richard, thank you for being here.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
And guys, thank you for tuning in. Details will be in the description below. If you want to click some of the links of the things that we talked about, learn more about them, resources like the Pause app and other things like that, be sure and take a look. So that'll do it. All right, guys, we'll see you later. Adios.